First off, I got to say your background here is awesome. I'm loving the Simpsons cabinet over there. Now, are you missing the control deck on that? Am I seeing that correctly?
You are correct. You know where one could be acquired?
You know
This
what? I can make some calls for you. I got some people out there on the West Coast. So
it actually, I think, needs. It doesn't really have much inside of it. I don't know. I think it needs the actual brain or whatever. I don't know.
sure, I
Is
got
that,
a buddy that's so you're in Vegas. Is that correct?
yes, sir.
Okay, so I don't have any. I don't know of anybody in Vegas off the top of my head, but I will. I know somebody in Phoenix that may know some people in Vegas, so I'll see what I can do for you there. But
People in
that's an
Phoenix,
awesome.
people in Phoenix know people in Vegas. That's for sure.
That's for sure. Absolutely. I'm a big fan of Vegas, the history there. Yeah, absolutely love Vegas. Not so much for the casinos, but actually, I was just talking to Joe yesterday about the casinos and the vibe in casinos and stuff. Are you a big casino guy? Because I know some people out there in Vegas. They're not, they're not people that live on the strip and do the whole touristy thing.
No, I walk through the casinos. When
Sure.
when I have meetings or we're going out, which is rare. I'm mostly a homebody. I don't
Hmm.
gamble. I don't gamble. But I enjoy people watching. When I do go out.
Well, there's plenty of that. You have that in abundance there. So
Yes.
yeah, that,
Preferably the kind of people that have boobies.
you can find plenty of that there for sure. But I think that's how it goes when you live close to casinos. I'm in Connecticut. We've got casinos here. He's near AC, and it's sort of that thing. You're used to it, so it doesn't have that. I don't know. It doesn't have that impact on you when you go to Vegas, and people
It's.
lose their
I
mind.
think I don't. I don't know if I would say it doesn't have the impact on me, but I would say my agenda when I'm here is totally different because before I would come to visit, my agenda was to party. Now my
Sure.
agenda is just to reside. So,
Yeah.
I used to come here a lot. I always wanted to move here. I always knew someday I would move here ever since first wrestled here in 95. And
Okay.
man, I wish I could go back and see the actual hotels and stuff now that I'm way more interested in certain things than I was back then, with
Right.
the history and all. But so I used to come here for 4 days at a time. It's all I could handle. And I'd have to crawl back home and recuperate.
That's your best bet. Yeah.
Right.
Anybody I talk to about Vegas, it's always if you can go there in 48 to 72 hours, that's going to be your sweet spot. If you stay any longer, I mean,
Yeah.
back when I first used to go, I was broke by 48 hours. So, the last day you're just wandering around. What can you do for free out there? So,
I love having everything so accessible if I do need it.
yeah,
But I am a homebody and usually I'm either traveling or I am recuperating from the traveling or getting ready to travel. And that doesn't leave much time for much else. Like I
sure.
really found out how true that is when I had like the whole month of May off and I realized I wasn't a lazy piece of doo doo that had no motivation. I was just tired. Like after having
Yeah.
several weeks off, man, I was fixing things around the house. I was building new things,
Yeah.
and I hate to give that up as soon as I start getting busy again. But that's the way it goes. A lot of.
Right.
I mean, how many of us really, really would rather keep working at their job than be off and be able to do whatever the hell they want. That's
It's
why it's
true.
a job, right? That's why it's a job. And
Right.
I'm not complaining. I love my job. I got a great job. I'm very grateful. But man, I found out I definitely like time off.
Well, it's good. You got to have that balance. I think balance is key
It's
in
all
in
about
everything
balance. It's
everything in
all
life.
about
Yeah.
balance.
So you're from Michigan originally, right? Because I know you're always billed out of Michigan, but sometimes that can be kind of a gimmick. So are you actually from Michigan?
Born and raised in Battle Creek, Michigan.
Excellent. I lived outside Detroit for a while, but Battle Creek, you're on the is that western side of
Yeah,
Michigan?
well, that's almost in the middle.
Okay.
It's west from Detroit, east from Kalamazoo.
Sure.
Yeah, like
And
20 minutes east from Kalamazoo.
okay.
Yeah,
All right.
Yeah,
And you started wrestling there, or how'd you
I
get
did.
into wrestling? That's what I'm dying to know.
Yeah, well, I had my mind made up that I wanted to be a wrestler, um, and I was so focused on that. And there was an ad in a wrestling magazine. I used to look at the magazines when my mom was grocery shopping, comic books too. Okay, maybe sometimes I'd sneak a penthouse in there and put it
Naturally.
put it inside a Mad magazine so no one knows. Um, but there
That's a
was an
hell of an
ad.
idea.
Yeah, there was an ad that said, "Do you have what it takes to be a pro wrestler?" And it said, "Send $5. We'll send you a list of all the wrestling schools around the world." And I sent money. They sent me a list. And when I was in high school, still, I was calling or writing, depending on what info was available. And I was corresponding, I was getting replies from some, and I had some conversations that I'll always remember. And, I learned that you have to pay a tuition, get trained at a school. And I learned it's important to find out who's training you, what kind of reputation they have, who have they trained, longevity of the school. A lot of schools would open up and shut down. And uh, I was learning all about that when I found out that there was a legend, the original Sheik, 45 minutes from my parents' house. And he was training. He had a student that I befriended. I was bagging groceries, raising money because I thought I was going to have to move to Boston. And I was saving money. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I was going to afford somehow to live by myself for the first time ever. And in Massachusetts, to go to Killer Kowalski's wrestling school. That was my plan. This big power lifter came through the grocery store, and I started talking to him, and one thing leads to another, and he took me to meet the original Sheik. And the original Sheik and Killer Kowalski in Massachusetts, coincidentally or synchronistically, because I don't believe in coincidences, but they were both trained by the same guy, by the way, Bert Ruby, the same old wrestler. You said
Wow.
like you knew that. You didn't know that. Nobody knows
I
that.
did not. I did not know. I was
Nobody
agreeing with
knows
you.
But anyway, I got trained by the Sheik in Lansing, Michigan. It wasn't a school; it was a very private thing. I got my buddy in. We did everything together, Dango, everything, and then there was like three of us. Sometimes four, five at the most, a group, and usually there was like just three of us that were always there. Whenever somebody new would come to check out the training, they never stayed because it was very, very rough. And the original Sheik, uh, unlike what you would expect, we never learned anything about not getting hurt, not hurting your opponent, landing right, none of that. It wasn't about that at all. It was about grabbing each other tight, squeezing each other, going from a headlock to a reverse, go behind to a hammer lock. And anytime the opponent was on their back, jump on him, try and pin him. Anytime you get a chance, try and put him on his shoulders and pin him. And so it was a very, very different kind of training than they do nowadays. And a lot different even than a lot of other schools did back then.
Wow, that's interesting.
Awesome,
And
Rob.
interesting how it's evolved then over. Is that typical, or do you feel like your training was just so much different than everything else even back then? Or is it
A little
just
bit
the
of
time?
little bit of both. See, the original Sheik was original because he was unique. So he was the first guy to do a lot of things that he did. I
Okay.
don't know if he was the first ever to be portrayed from Araby, but he was a top box office attraction in the 50s and the 60s. The Iron Sheik that a lot of us know now, was a
Take off of the Sheik. Yeah.
there you go. That's a good way to put it. And he was the first one to wear curly-toed boots, the first one to throw fire in the ring. He said he was the first one to bring a snake. And anyway, back then in the 50s and 60s, pro wrestling was a a closed door society. So nobody got in the dressing rooms. unless they belonged. And all the wrestlers were so committed to the number one rule back then, which is what I was taught. The number one rule is to protect the business.
Right.
And so that means if you're going to try a move and you might slip and mess it up and it's going to make the business bad, rule it out. It's not worth it. You can't do it or you're going to be in trouble and you're going to get a lot of heat for it. Nowadays, it's changed so much that they feel like if they hit half the moves, it doesn't matter if they miss half of them. And they grew up not believing in what they were doing, got taught by people that didn't believe in what they were doing. And so they're out there believing that what they're doing isn't legit, and they believe that they're working in front of a crowd that doesn't think it's legit. And so it's a lot different than protecting the business back then. And I notice it a lot when I'm working younger guys. It's like it's a hard fit.
It's the opposite now. I'm sorry to cut you off, Rob. It's the inverse now. You're I'm just enjoying these stories so much. But yeah, that's an art that's long gone. Whether you want to talk about protecting the business or kayfabe or whatever want to name that you want to bring to it, that's gone for sure.
Right. Yeah. So I was kind of like at the end of the age when the participants actually protected what they were doing because they made their money off of it. You know, I mean, they feed their families off of it. So, you know, I'm even, you know, I'm old school by new school standards, you know, and I can't believe some of the stuff that people do some of the new moves, for instance, wrestlers think they just came up with, and it's like, well, one, you can see RVD doing anything that anyone's doing now anyway on old
20 years ago.
Eventually you're going to come across the footage and see me do it. But also there's a reason that everything was thrown out too. There's a reason that we didn't keep a lot of stuff. And so the reasons have changed. So that's why some people do stuff now. And it's totally different. When I came in, I remember even in ECW, you know, when I've been wrestling 6-7 years, Sabu, who did train me, the Sheik's nephew, he would routinely in this building that we were at, I think it was in Queens, I think it was the Elks Lodge now that I think about it, but our dressing room was a shortcut for the hot dog guy to go from the kitchen to the vending window, and he would try to cut through, and if Sabu caught him, like he usually would, he would grab his tray, throw it upside down, throw the guy against the wall. Yeah, he was still old school as could be. Awesome. You can do that nowadays, you get sued.
No, right. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, you could probably do half of that and get sued nowadays. It's a different world. Yeah. Yeah. So you were ahead of your time, I think, in a lot of ways. Do you think that it was better back then, or do you understand kind of the evolution of things and relate to it in some way now?
Both. I think. Okay. Yeah, I prefer the way that it was back then, but then I'm biased because I have an old school foundation, you know.
Right. So
I hate to see the integrity and actual fabric of everything that was. Yeah. At the same time, everything has to evolve. You know, I don't know where it'll keep going. But, you know, when I was a kid, it was cool to do a wheelie, you know.
Yeah.
There was no extreme bike riding. I used to like Ghost Rider. I read the comic books also. And he would do things in a comic book on a motorcycle that wasn't doable back then. He'd ride his motorcycle. They worked for a carnival. That was the whole gimmick. And Johnny Blaze, the character in it, had a motorcycle, and he would ride it down a tightrope, you know, and jump a ramp, you know, and do a backflip. And people weren't doing that stuff. The closest thing was this dude, Evel Knievel, that would attempt things and didn't care how he landed. So he would just
usually landed in the hospital. Yeah.
But nowadays, if you look at the stuff that people are doing, whether it's a BMX or a motocross, or either way, incredible. It wasn't even possible in the comic books back then. So likewise, you know, everything has to evolve. But
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
true.
I do think it was better. You know, I understood it more. I related to it more.
Do you feel like you were part of it evolving? Because if you look back to your style, I think that you were one of the early ones that was pushing the envelope and doing new
Absolutely.
things. And now
I
you see
do.
guys that are doing these incredible high spots and a faster pace. And I think back to when did I first see elements of this style? And I think RVD.
Yeah, that's a great point, Chase.
I do feel like I was
Not to
partially.
blame you for the change in,
But I
the
do feel
landscape,
guilt
but
in that. No, but I mean, I honestly am surprised that more people don't put blame on me for. Uh, I mean, I helped bridge the gap, but I feel like, from my perspective, that a lot of wrestlers nowadays, the newer generation, were inspired by watching me, but I never got to teach them the mindset, the fundamentals of what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, what I'm thinking about, you know, my commitment. Uh, so I feel like without that, it kind of changed their agenda to just doing high spots.
Yeah,
that's a good
that's a
point.
good point.
Yeah.
When you talk about high spots, Rob, a big feather in your cap is your versatility. You could wrestle a very different match with Mick Foley, hardcore style, and that would be very different than your matches with Sabu. And that's even different than a match with Bam Bam Bigelow, let's say, where it's like David and Goliath, which is also different than a match with Taz, let's say. Do you have a style that's that's something that you do that's more of a favorite than others?
Well, I would have more fun wrestling wrestlers that are more like-minded, that share a similar view of what's really cool in a match. So one of my favorite guys is always going to be Sabu. I love wrestling Jeff Hardy. Had great matches with Jerry Lynn. But
Chris Jericho.
yeah, definitely.
The old stuff. Oh man.
So something that is very relevant to point out here. This is way back 95-ish, whatever, when Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels were neck and neck in competition, right? And I'm coming up, but I'm young and green. And Ben Masters, this is a wrestling promoter from Georgia, Cordele City Wrestling. He asked me, who do I think is the best in the business? Is it Bret Hart or is it Shawn Michaels? So I guess the options were, everyone pretty much figured it was those two.
I love you, baby.
I love you, baby.
Hey, y'all.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm a fan of
84.
hers too. I'm a fan. Tell her I'm a fan of hers too.
Thank you.
Big time fan. Big time
Thank
fan.
you.
I don't, Divas Now, that moniker gets a bad word, but like that's you're the direction of where the women wrestlers are going, the performers. And I'm not waxing poetic. I'm being real. They're going in your direction. Keep being trailblazing. Awesome.
Hey, cool. Can't have one. Can't have one
Is
without.
that Rugrats?
What? Yeah, Rugrats.
Yes.
Bye, baby.
My baby, love you. Have a
Bye,
good
y'all. Have fun.
Yeah.
Take care. Thank you.
Hey Rob, she's awesome. She's awesome.
one. Yes, she is. We're very, very happy. Life just gets better and better. And ever since I can remember, like when I was a kid, I couldn't wait to grow up and be an adult. You know what I mean? Because I knew I wanted to wrestle. And I was like, what do I need school for? And what do I need, everyone telling me about what they're offering at college and stuff. I don't, what? I want to grow up. Let's go. And I've always felt like the future is going to be so much better than the present. And you know what? I've always been right. There's little bumps in the road, but that's because you're only seeing right now. You're not seeing the whole picture, and we never can see the whole big picture. So our perspective on how much we're seeing is always going to be limited and biased to what we're seeing now. But man, in the big picture, I'm always happier. I'm always in a better place, and it's because I spend life studying energy. What brings my energy up? that I need more of, what brings my energy down that I need less of. And that became my study, and it's just made life so awesome. So
This is
hopefully that,
awesome, Rob.
yeah, and I'm always right. And I just already know, like in every measurable standard, well, not every measurable standard, but the ones that are important to me and my values, like I just know, like I'm excited about what's coming up, specific things, and just knowing in general the direction that I'm going.
Rob, I
But
wanted to ask you, I don't mean to cut you off.
what
Chase.
was the last one? What was the last one? I didn't finish answering that last one.
Well, wait, I'm going to get to that, but
Okay,
the conversation's going in a direction that I didn't think it was going to,
Fair
about
enough.
energy in Headstrong, the documentary, which is amazing, by the way. You talked about
Thank you.
faith. Yeah, oh, it's amazing. You talked about faith, divinity beliefs. Would you call yourself more of a religious person or more spirituality? Because in that documentary, you touch on, spiritual vibration and controlling your inner frequencies. This is stuff that I'm very big in. I know a lot of other people are big into this also. So if you could speak on that a little bit more.
Yes. So I would not consider myself religious. In my mind, when I hear religious, I automatically link that to organized religion.
Dogma, yeah.
And that's something that I'm too open-minded to get behind. I could never commit to knowing that all these crazy historical stories are something to commit my life and afterlife to. I'm just too open-minded, and there's too many reasons, too many things that to tell me that the boundaries need to be widened in order for me to even accept some of that stuff. And I used to, even as a kid, look at comparing Greek mythology to Christianity. When I grew up, I've been around for hundreds of years. So the further you go back, the more religious everybody was.
Correct.
Everybody.
Absolutely.
Back in like the 20s and 30s, like when Hollywood first opened up, it was called Hollywood Land. Harvey Wilcox, the guy that owned the property, when he was selling real estate, he mandated that you had to build a church if you were going to buy a big chunk of land. And back in those days, there were signs in the restaurants that would say like no dogs, no actors allowed, because entertainers were always the ones that stood out. They stay up all night and they sleep in during the day. They do drugs. They have premarital sex. They're crazy. And that's always been the entertainment business. That's why the more scandals happen and it's exposed, I always find myself talking about how are people so shocked, but they don't understand it's always been that way. The Weinstein scandal, It's always been that way. Louis B. Mayer, way back when he ran MGM Studios, he used to prostitute out all the female actresses, and it's just the way that it's always been.
Just seeing more of it brought to the light, I assume. I think that's the shock for people is.
And I think to people that don't know that's just not part of their normal life. Right. For me, I've always been in the entertainment business, and so I'm sure I've seen a lot of things that would shock a lot of other people, but I also don't want to lose perspective on how religious is the normal status quo society right now. I don't know, but it's way less than it was in the 80s or in the 70s. And and so decisions,
morals and decency. I dig what you're saying, Rob.
Decisions and laws were created based on those principles. Unfortunately, we still have those to deal with. They haven't been updated, a lot of them anyway. But so I've always been spiritual. I've always known there's a greater power. And I grew up in a haunted house. The guy that lived in the house before us hung himself in the garage. And I actually went to school, as did my siblings, with the family, with the kids, the nieces, nephews, and it was weird because we felt his presence the whole time. Yeah, the whole time we were there. There was always noises in the other room. There was weird things happening. And my mom taught us to believe in it, but it was just a friendly ghost and not to be scared. So that was always my perspective. Um,
Well, I think that's a good outlook, especially for, being in that situation as a child too. That's the better
yeah,
way to look at it, you know.
yeah. When I went through as an adult, I really believe as adults that we need to reprogram ourselves. There's a book, The Four Agreements, that tells you how to do that.
Great book, Rob.
Great book, right? Yeah, that really opened my mind to it. But I mean, I was already there. I don't mean that was the life-changing book, but I do love it. I believe in it very much.
But you do that too, Rob. I mean, I don't mean to cut you off. You manifest, really. I mean, let's call a spade a spade.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I went through a time as an adult when I went through a struggle and then had to overcome it and then rebuild myself. And a lot of people don't know about that if they only saw me wrestle. But it was a lot of stuff happening. I had a divorce coming for a long time, so that was progressively worse and worse and worse. And then there was like a separation, and then my dog died, and then my dad died, and everything like in this small amount of time. And at the same time, I had these concussion symptoms, and my evil ex is trying to claim that I'm faking these symptoms, so that I don't have to pay her the exorbitant amount of the extortion that, she was getting anyway. But
Sure.
during this time, I had to learn how to overcome depression. And I also had to learn how to reprioritize. And when I did that, my spirit became the most important thing. And from that point forward, I would always use how it affects my spiritual vibration to make all of my decisions. And, a lot of my peers, you got your mind, body, and spirit, right? Obviously. And mind, it's very, you read, you learn, got it. Body, we're in the gym, whatever. My spirit was significantly ill and needed recovery. And when I focused on that and focused on the vibrations, what I had to do, because I was in a dark spot, I had to, and I had a conversation with my agent in Hollywood, Mr. Kevin Turner, and he said what a lot of people say, hey, just take it one day at a time. Could not imagine. Sorry, I had to swallow. Could not imagine getting to the end of the day. And my voice was weak. Like, oh my God, like one day at a time. You say that like it's nothing. But I know that a lot of people beg for the end of the day to come because they're struggling so bad. And the day seems so long. And I was like, dude, he said, well, you know what? And this is what got through to me. He says, sometimes you got to take one moment at a time. And I was like, I can do that. I can plug into a moment where I actually feel good. I mean, there's things where my vibration is actually in a good place. It may be whatever. It might be watching YouTube. It might be riding a bike. It might be
reading a novel. Yeah, watching a comedy.
Whatever it is.
Whatever brings your energy up. Yeah. I love it.
I
Rob.
learned,
This is very inspirational, man.
Yeah. And I know that a lot of people listening are going to relate to this. I like the subject of mental health because people are surprised to learn that they can relate to me, that I was there. And I know people that don't get depressed do not get it. They don't understand. What do you got to be depressed about? Yeah. Even me, when you can only see darkness, it doesn't matter what's on the other side.
Well, from the outside in too, you bring up the part of the fan's perspective. What does he have to be depressed about? Chase and I talk about this all the time. Robin Williams, who we love, we're a huge fan of. That was the biggest thing that, I mean, all of them, everybody would say that. What was that about? What did he have to
I
say
get
about?
it. I get it. You know what I mean? And so I can relate to these people. And one thing that they don't like to hear, but it's such a fact, a lot of the people need meds because brain chemistry is everything.
Preach,
Brain chemistry is what gives you a hard on when you're looking at the girl in the swimsuit bending over. You know what I mean? It's boom, whoa. It's like a lot of us have imbalances, and some of that can be cured. And instead, people are killing themselves because they don't want to be hooked on drugs. Drugs are bad. You know, they don't want to be weak and admit that they need antidepressants. And then people that don't get it will back that kind of theology up, that way of thinking. They'll say, you know what, you just need to get laid, or you whatever. Right. You know, you gotta get out of the house.
Yeah, yep.
It's a real thing, and it's brain chemistry. And I got to tell you, it doesn't mean, and even if you had a bad experience with meds before, that isn't a very good test run. You tried one.
Yeah, you put your foot in the water.
Had a bad experience. It might be the wrong doses, might be the wrong med, might be the wrong doctor. People tell me something about chiropractors. Oh no, I won't. I went to a chiropractor one time and my neck felt worse after I left. Boom, for their entire life now chiropractor's got a bad name. Yeah. People feel the same way about a lot of things, and it's basic thinking.
Great point.
It's
basic. Let me ask you, because you talked about depression. At what stage in your career did you go through this harder point? Because, like you said, I think a lot of people look at anybody that has success, whether you're a pro wrestler, a movie star, whether you're on YouTube. Everybody looks at somebody that has success that they may look up to, and they wonder exactly as we just said, what do they have to be depressed about? So I'm just curious, at what point in your career did you go through this hard point? Was it on the way up? Was it, in your prime, as they would say?
Yeah, pretty much right smack in the middle of my prime.
And that's how I feel like it is for most people. And oddly enough, that's the period of time where people are most skeptical of what you're going through. That's when they have that, what does he have to be depressed about?
Yeah, 2015 was particularly rough. That was when I did the return to WWE in 2013 and 14. So it started way back then, though. My dad had a stroke. That was a big part of that. Everything with the wife was going south since probably 2010, 2011. So progressively getting worse, and worse. And there was times when I'd be in the ring looking at all the fans, RVD, and I'd be thinking, wow, if they only knew.
Yeah. It's deep, man. That's deep.
Yeah.
It's crazy how it happens, at the times when everybody else would think that, everything's going so well for you,
Yeah, I had a friend of mine, I'll never forget him messaging me saying, man, it's just so good to see you out there, happy and enjoying yourself. I can tell that you're really having fun. I was like, wow.
Well, you're keeping it from the fans. I guess you're doing what you're supposed to do, right?
I guess that's being professional. I got to be. That's part of the job, though. I got to be the guy they paid to see, no matter what's going on.
But it's tough to be the guy that has to do that, to endure that and to take everybody else on your shoulders, for that ride. It's got to be tough. So I can. It's
not. It's an easy job.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you've had such a long career now. It's interesting that was the the struggle for you was those particular years.
Yeah.
What was ECW like for you though? What was that's when you were really starting to come into your own, I think, and gain more and more popularity. Do you look back on those days and have fond memories of the ride up to the top?
For sure. People ask a lot, like ECW, WWE, TNA, what was your favorite time of your career? And I got to break that into different perspectives. Like WWE made me the biggest star. That was the most money to be made. They pumped me out there in 150 countries, most of which I've never even heard of, to where I'm part of their culture. And that's amazing that they do that. TNA was the easiest money for the work. I went from 5 days a week, every week, pretty much on a schedule, to doing 2 days back to back every 2 weeks. So I would just have a trip every 2 weeks to Orlando and back, and we were doing all of our TV right then for comparative money to the same kind of deal that I had, is my downside in WWE. And that's why I'm saying, I always say, like, life just gets better and better, like, wow, now it's like 2 days every 2 weeks for what I was doing 10 days for. And then ECW was the most fun. Part of that period, and that being the most fun, was being hungry. That is part of it. You're building a name for yourself. You're realizing that all of your efforts are contributing specifically towards your growth in the industry and the growth of the company, because more people are, and I never lost that state of mind anyway. Even on top in WWE, I always felt like every night, like I want to contribute towards someone's perspective of me growing. So that's why, I never like take it easy and that's what I was going to say. We never did go back to that, but we're going to right now. Ben Masters, the promoter in Cardinal City, he had Peach State Wrestling, and he said, who's the best wrestler, Shawn Michaels or Bret Hart? I don't know what my answer was, but he said, I go with this guy. I think he said Bret Hart. Yeah. And he said, and this is the point, you got to go with consistency. Because you can say, he had some great matches that are very memorable with this guy. He had some great matches with that guy. But he said in this profession, your job is you got to consistently have great matches, regardless of if you're in the ring with a big guy, little guy, fast guy, slow guy. And so for that reason, I think he went with Bret. And that always stuck out in my mind. And that instantly became my personal goal and agenda in the industry. So, when you're asking before, and it was relative to that question about the matches that I have and that I prefer, I like, having great matches with Little Guido, with Spike Dudley, or One Man Gang, Bam Bam Bigelow, or, Tanaka, or, Mustafa, Sabu. But if they're like-minded, I know Rey Mysterio and I, boom, we're going to go out there. It's going to be exciting and have a lot of moves. Yeah. But I also know, regardless of who I'm out there with, I know I'm going to have a really good match, probably a great match. But now, if I'm out there with some of the younger guys that are a little bit off on the compatibility because of obvious reasons, I don't know for sure anymore. Now I'm kind of like, well, at least if this match is the shits, it's going to be your fault. It'll be the first shitty match I've had in 30 years.
Well, do you? This is this. I didn't write this question down, but it came to me. As an elder statesman, do you drive, so to speak? Do you drive the pace of the match? Do you call the spots with the younger guys, Rob?
Circumstantially. Let me just put it that way. I mean, I have my input. A lot of guys are afraid to say anything, and they just want to be respectful to me. So they want to, and then a lot of times I'm like, come on, dude, I know you fantasize about wrestling with me, and you've got a whole bunch of ideas in your head, so spit it out. Yeah. And it's like, sometimes it's like pulling it out because I'm like, no.
That's a compliment, but you see, that's a compliment. They're starstruck in your presence. You know what I mean? Then
it's respectful. It's
totally,
the right thing.
Rob, totally.
Of course, it's the right thing to do. I'm not going to be fond of a young guy coming up and wanting to do like every move in the book, and that happens a lot more than not, which is something I had to adjust with. When I started, actually, when I got to TNA, I felt like that was my experience there way back in the first run in 2010. All of a sudden, I started feeling like, wow, all these really young guys automatically feel like they should go toe to toe and be like, they feel like they're me. They feel like they're me, and that the match should tell that story, that they're, my equal. And wow, I didn't like it. But then, when you tell the story of a match, it's not the day of the enhancement matches anymore, where just one big guy would totally squash a jobber. That's what I grew up watching. Yeah. I thought that was a great way to promote the stars and make it really exciting when they would then face each other. But it's not like that anymore. If it was like that for the last 20 years, who knows? Maybe I would have been a job guy anyway because of my size when I broke in. I don't know. Who knows? But now you tell a story in the match with two guys, it can be redundant if it's like, hey, shine, heat, come back, go home,
Yeah,
the
definitely.
moves don't mean as much if no one's selling them.
Yeah,
That's true.
yeah.
That's true. What's it? So, where do you find yourself working mostly these days? I know you were last with AEW, right? So
That was my last matches were in April.
but
Uh,
you're doing indie matches still on a regular basis.
sometimes,
Sometimes.
yeah. I don't want to be out there all the time, and so
Right.
my booking requirements reflect that.
Okay. So I saw you wrestled Matt Riddle not too long ago. What was that like?
Yeah.
Because he's a much young, obviously much. I guess he's that newer generation of wrestler that it would be quite different than what you're used to, coming up with.
True, and he's an awesome guy, and I shouldn't say obviously, but predictably, I vibe very well with him.
I would say that would be what most people
we, we really
There's
get
no
along.
surprise. Yeah.
Yeah, I love him. We really get along well. When during the match, the crowd was like so excited and so engaged into us. That made the experience way more fun. Even if there's a couple thousand people that are way into it, sometimes it could be better than having 10,000 people. Not that I would know what it's like having people not into my match, but that's just a fact with wrestling, though. That it's more about how engaged they are. And anyway, the crowd on their own in the middle of our match started chanting "RK Bro."
Yep.
Wait, no, RV Bro.
RV bro.
RV Bro, yeah. Right, RK Bro's him and
RK bro. Yeah,
and
that would
I
be
got
RV Bro. I guess that's what it was. Is that what it
RV
was?
Bro.
Anyway, yeah, they had an original one. I think that's what it was, and they loved the match, and it was awesome. I actually met Matt Riddle years ago when he was in the UFC, when he was on that Ultimate Fighter show.
Yep.
At believe it or not, at a cannabis fundraising event.
You're kidding.
It was at the Playboy Mansion.
Oh,
So we were smoking in the grotto.
this is wild.
Very nice.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I knew who he was. He knew who I was. We're like, bro, dude.
And all these years later, you're wrestling together. That's awesome. That's awesome.
So cool.
Yeah, he seems like a good dude.
Yeah.
I've just seen his interviews and stuff. I got to see him wrestle. I think it was Keith Lee before they were both at WWE early on, and you just knew, after UFC that he was totally starting over and going to do some amazing things.
Yeah, and off camera, at least when he's at work, he's that same guy, that same vibe. Like, it was obvious to me right away in the dressing room that he was happy to be there. He was like genuinely stoked and loves the business, and that was a very appealing quality.
Yeah, I've seen him interact with his fans, and it comes across the same way, just very genuine. And while I'm on that topic, the first wrestler I ever met as a kid was actually RVD, and you were the same way. Absolutely amazing. This would have been back in, I think you had just jumped over to WWF at the time. So was that 01, or was it? It might have been right over 2002, somewhere around that time period. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I often get good reports like that, and just like Ben Masters told me to be, I'm consistent.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good point. Very good point.
In and out of the ring, on my podcast, I do something. I share my personal values. I call it RV Theology because it's my one of a kind perspective. We got into a little bit how I made my spirit my top priority of the three things, and in order to do that, my agenda in life is to build my relationship with the universe, and that's the universe to me is that higher power. So
makes sense.
I'll consider myself, yeah. Yeah, and it's something I started way back then. It's something I've been successful at, and I always feel like I understand my place in the universe more, my relationship more. When you're young, you don't understand and you're confused and it's intimidating and you go and who do you follow? Who do you listen to? You got possible pathways of information coming from every direction. How do you make the choices? It's all it's I don't want to say it's a game, but going through life takes some serious navigating. It's not hard to make a wrong choice.
Yeah.
We all go through it. And so I like to share the lessons that I've learned, the values that I've developed from said lessons, and I'm strong on it. I'm strong enough to go ahead and tell people this is our ideology. This is the way I feel. You might hear different from everybody else, but I feel strong enough.
There's always conflicting advice, I think, from
There always is,
whoever you turn to. But I do like the way that you handle it. This is
Yeah.
what worked for me, and maybe it'll work for you, maybe not. But you put it out there for people to absorb. What they can from it.
Absolutely. And judge me all you want by it. I'm going to be consistent. If you look at what I said years ago, it's not going to conflict. I do grow. Part of growing is always looking in the past at a lesser form of ourselves, as sometimes degrading as it is. Sometimes it's full of regret and we hate that person, but we got to learn, you grew from it. That's, we all do that. That's how we get where we're at. And so that's part of the pathway as well.
Absolutely, Rob. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that.
Point.
I think
No, go ahead.
I was saying one example just popped in my head of our ideology that it's something that I will say. Anybody listening, RVD's telling you this. You probably are not going to hear this from everyone else because I think differently than other people. But when it comes to people, especially males, a male will people judge people by their own values, and that's the way it's always going to be. You're judging me by your values, but I have my own, so I'm not doing wrong by my values. I'm only doing wrong by yours. So shut your mouth, keep it to yourself, because I don't want to be you. I don't want to be you. I want to be
right.
me.
There's a cookie cutter aspect in society. Sorry to cut you off, Rob, but I agree with you. Yeah, it takes away from independent thought and creativity.
One thing I want to give permission to people to not necessarily think like I do, not necessarily think physically, and not necessarily even think violently or handling your problems in that manner, because it's typical in the cookie cutter values that you bring up for someone to say like, and you call yourself a man?
Yeah.
And when they do that,
right, or a conservative, or
it can make you judge yourself.
They put you in these boxes to take away your uniqueness. That's a great point, Rob.
Wait a minute, you let him say that to you and you didn't punch him in his face?
Yeah.
I can't, but you let him call your mom that? Wait a minute. You did what? You should have. Soon as he turned his head, you should have punched him. You waited and told the police. I'm going to tell you right now. I used to, just like anybody else, think that sounded fine. Now I understand. Not everybody thinks physically like I do. It thinks about solving problems by overpowering somebody or by using violence to solve their problem. So if you find yourself in this situation where somebody is saying, dude, you should never let somebody disrespect you without punching them in the nose, I'm going to tell you, you're fine not punching them in the nose, and you're going to get yourself in trouble going around with that way of thinking. In today's society, you're going to get sued. Big lawsuit. If you want to see an example, watch my RVDology on reprogramming. The audio screwed up on it. I got to figure out how to turn the volume up on it. It's one of those I recorded, and afterwards I'm like, damn it, but I left it up. I had a lawsuit. Yeah. Some guy started a fight with me, didn't like the results, and he thought that I was going to be buying him and his lawyers a big house on the lake after this. Made up this big stupid story, and it went on for like 4 years, and I had to spend tens of thousands of dollars on legal services.
I didn't know this, Rob. They kept this
No,
quiet.
you wouldn't unless you really know
Yeah.
me.
Well, I checked the dirt. I'm a mark, so
It's
this is
probably
new to
not
me.
out there, but that's the thing
It's
about
not.
my YouTube.
Yeah.
All my RV theology stories on YouTube that are in the category, they're all stories no one's ever heard before and no one knows of.
That's awesome.
They just sit there undiscovered. And then my podcast, I do a little RV theology at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
But I actually have episodes where I just pick one value and I tell a story. Haven't done one in a while, but I have a whole row of those. And one of them I do talk about this. But my point is, you can't go around touching somebody, even touching them in an aggressive manner, unprovoked, which is debatable, without getting into legal and other consequences. So I think that's horrible advice. Don't let anybody disrespect you without punching them in their nose. Having been through what I've been through, that's very expensive. And if the jury hadn't seen through this scumbag, because I had to actually go to trial and in front of a jury of my peers, and if they hadn't seen through his BS, they were going for punitive damages. And if you don't know what that is, punitive is when you really try to hurt the entity that you're suing in a way that makes them change the way that they live. That's when you sue McDonald's for hot coffee. You go for $400 million to get them to change the temperature of their coffee.
Right. Right.
And if someone disrespects you and you handle it in another way besides punching them in the nose, I support that depending on
the jury saw through it, Rob.
as far as choosing another way.
Yeah.
I support that. What that way is going to be circumstantial.
That's good. Thank God the jury.
For real.
During during the jury selection process, if somebody was wearing an RVD hat, they were kept on the jury.
Yeah. There was one guy in there that I knew.
He gestured like this in the courthouse.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's true. I never thought about that. They must have to go through quite a process weeding people out, because you're not supposed to know, who any of the parties are in that situation. So
one guy was from Battle Creek, Michigan. How's he not gonna hear of RVD, right?
There you go. That'll do it. But yeah, your reach is beyond just Battle Creek, Michigan. Right. So I could imagine that being a major problem.
This was in Los Angeles anyway, and
okay.
It just got. It was last year. I can't remember what. I guess November. I just around Thanksgiving is 1st of December, just ended after from something that happened in 2019, I believe. So. Okay.
Well, somewhere right now, somebody's pissed off that they missed this headline, because they certainly love to put that stuff at the top of the news feeds when
I'm always surprised.
Going on.
I'm always surprised when I open up during my podcast or on just the standalone videos that I've filmed myself. I'm always surprised more info doesn't get out there, because I'm more interested in sharing stories that people haven't heard of than the rehashed,
right.
Same old.
Rob, when you on the Headstrong documentary, what I loved was, because now you're reminding me a part of your, YouTube, you mentioned the podcast stuff outside of wrestling. But the great thing I loved about one of the great things I loved about the documentary was your stand-up. What was that like, performing at Dangerfields and the Improv? And is there something like that in the future that we're going to see more of? Yeah. So I started doing stand-up comedy in I think it was around 96 or 97, so if you find old footage of me doing it, I'm not going to be too proud of it. Just like if you watch my first matches, I was green. But now I'm a big fan of mine. If you don't like something about it, I probably disagree with you. But I'm also very good at it, comfortable at it. The last 4 or 5 stand-ups that I've done, I write a whole new set
and then every time, and then go up there and deliver it. And it's very much like wrestling as far as visualizing, putting the material together, visualizing me doing it, visualizing the reception by the audience and their reaction, and then going out there and boom, going through it, getting that instant gratification. And that way, and in front and being in front of a lot of people, they're very much alike in those ways. And now I'm very comfortable also in those 4 or 5 matches, which I have on YouTube in a category stand-up comedy. Besides writing new material, I also go up unannounced so that I'm actually working with a crowd that isn't there to see Rob Van Dam, but it's there to see stand-up comedy,
That
So
makes sense, yeah.
yeah, so sometimes I'm advertised, and then it's full of wrestling fans, and that could be good or bad. Sometimes in that situation, sometimes it seems like the fans don't get some of the jokes. They're just waiting for the meet and greet afterwards. They're like,
Right.
But
well, you're not getting that authentic response, if you're just performing to wrestling fans that know you for something else.
I have a dry sense of humor that comedians refer to as intelligent humor. So that means you might have to think about it. A lot of people don't know that I'm joking when I am joking in real life. Like Katie will roll her eyes because there's some things I just do all the time, and nobody hears it. Like if we're having a conversation and you tell me, man, I can't remember who told me this, but the other day, boom, I automatically cut you off and say, who told you that? Nobody ever knows that. Nobody ever gets it. It's only funny to me, and I'm not laughing. I'm no selling it, so they don't know I'm joking. But I don't know who told me this, but who told that? Who was it? I do that every time. So Katie
they got it at the dock, Rob. I mean, you crushed it. So the audience was definitely they were definitely.
It was an honor to be at Dangerfields. I've performed there a few times, and the guy that was there, became a friend of mine. The guy that ran it, I don't know if he's still there or not. I think he got sick during COVID, and I actually need to check and see. Really good guy though, and I had an open invite anytime I want to jump up on stage to do so at Dangerfield. So it was an honor to answer your question.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think that style of comedy though, that's on the fly, that's not rehearsed, or at least not rehearsed too much. I don't know. I think that is the best way to go with comedy. I see so many people that are polished off that it's like, that they've done the same routine over and over the entire tour. It just doesn't hit the same way that, stuff that's on the fly, delivers.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying that the way that I do it is to go on the fly. That's me off the stage, outside of the ring, just me in everyday life. That's just one of that's how I entertain myself. But I grew up loving Stephen Wright, Bob Hope before that, and as an adult, this was after I got into doing stand-up as an adult, like within the last 10 years or so, that I got turned on to Mitch Hedberg, and I get compared to him a lot by people at my shows, and I just feel like he and I would get along really great. I like his vibe, and I like his sense of humor. My favorite Mitch Hedberg joke is, I used to do drugs. I still do, but I used to too. A wrestling fan is just going to stare back at you when you hit him with some shit like that.
Well, I could understand that. Now, you mentioned before YouTube. What got you into, and I'll say this, I know you've been on YouTube for a very long time now. When did you start YouTube?
I don't even know. It's been like 12, 14, 15 years. I don't know. I forgot about it for a huge time span. And then a couple of years ago, I guess during COVID, I started using it again. And so there was a big window. But, I used to do a podcast probably before anybody was even doing it, like wrestlers. And
Now everybody has a podcast.
Blog Talk Radio. I don't know if you know about that, but Blog Talk Radio. And so I have those old episodes on my YouTube. That might have been when I started using it. And I did RVD TV.
I remember RVD TV. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've always kind of like documented life, and then also enjoyed having shows where I discuss and talk topics and share insight. I've always enjoyed that.
So you do standalone videos. I know you have the podcast as well. You're live on YouTube. It's multiple times a week. That's correct, right?
Once a
At
week.
least I've seen. Okay, all right.
Once a week.
There's been some weeks where you've been on it a couple of times, I think.
Yeah, sometimes because of the schedule, we might have to do 2 a week to make up for one or something.
Yeah, makes
on
sense.
a schedule, but it's a growing thing. You know, I don't think me or my guys know exactly the best way to get the most views. You know,
it's a grind. I think for anybody, you know, and I know people that are established in their, you know, in whatever space they're in. It's a grind to break into the algorithm, and there's just so many moving parts to YouTube. You know, people think that just because you have a following, you know, outside of YouTube, it instantly translates, and it doesn't. You know, it's
right. Yeah,
it's a grind to build it all up, but
it's definitely a place to find me. And you know, when I do conventions or wrestling shows or whatever, I try to film while I'm there and edit and make some episodes and put them up on YouTube. So that's another category. You can see my conventions or my.
I'll put a link actually in the description of this video too, and I'll throw it up on screen so everybody can click over and check you out on there. Because your podcast is awesome, because so many wrestling podcasts are really focused on certain aspects, and you cover a wide range of topics. You talk about all types of different things. I think it's just refreshing to follow that sort of format, you know, that's not just always wrestling specific.
Yeah. And I feel like I can be pretty sure that giving my insight is just automatically going to be different, because I always think different than most people, not just basic thinkers, but even advanced thinkers. You know, like my perspective is true to be. It usually is like one of a kind. So I feel like if I'm giving my perspective, they're getting something they're not going to get somewhere else. And then you know, it's awesome engaging with the fans and, you know, hearing their questions, what they have, and stuff like that as well. So I'll probably keep doing it for a while. I have something that I've been working on for a long time that I will be promoting in the very near future, that has a lot to do with both giving back to the fans, giving the fans a big say so, and following daily vlogs. So
very nice. Is that going? I won't ask you too many questions. Is it going
to be
somehow connected to the channel, or is it going to be separate from the channel?
Separate.
Okay. All right.
A lot of people are going to be involved in this, and we actually just started reaching out to other talent to let them know about it. But we'll be going live soon enough to where it's okay to start throwing hints out there. It's something that,
cool.
Yeah, I hope everyone is as excited as I am about it. It came from my brain. So
excellent. Well, I'm excited to hear more about this, but I won't pry.
Maybe I'll be back on the show to promote it.
You definitely are coming back on the show, Rob.
Cool.
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. Well, I will provide links and all that stuff to you know, all your social media. You also have a website as well. What's your website?
Yeah, robvandam.com. And that's also something I've had forever. And every once in a while, I take a 5-year break from checking it out. But now, and as of the last, I don't know, 6 months or whatever, I have been using that to post all of my schedule on it when it comes to conventions and or wrestling matches that fans can come see me at. So if you go to robvandam.com and you go to appearances, you can count on finding the most up-to-date schedule there.
Excellent.
Yeah, I do it myself. I post it there myself, and I have fun with it once I learn how to go into the editing world.
That's awesome that you're doing it yourself. So
Yeah.
you're pulling your hair out like the rest of us that are trying to, figure out websites and YouTube and all this stuff.
It's so much easier than going to my web guy and saying, "Hey, can you add that I'm in Frankfort, Kentucky, November 17th? Do you have a poster?" I think so. Let me find, but anyway, boom,
It
boom,
just drags
boom.
it out. Yeah. It's better to just do it yourself. I was going through that earlier today with people that want to do editing for me and stuff like that. And I would love to do less, but it's like just the time that it takes to do all of that. It's like,
Gotta
you can just sit
prioritize.
down and do it yourself and it'll be done. It'll be done the way you want it to. So
Right.
yeah, you have to streamline stuff.
I'm pretty far behind on conventions for that same reason too, as far as posting on my YouTube. I have some recent stuff, but also some old stuff I haven't posted yet that still lives on my phone. So, if I came to your town and you saw me filming and you came in and you met me at the table and I said, "Dude, you're going to be on my YouTube," and you haven't seen it yet, you're still coming. You're still going to be on my YouTube.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm sure that lights up faces when they know they're going to be on something like that too. So that's pretty cool.
And
So
that's cool.
is your YouTube all you two, or do you have a team of guys that are working with you over there?
I have a team of two. I have
Okay.
Yeah, my mostly one guy, and then my guy
co-host for
my
the
co-host
podcast.
too.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have him, and I have YouTube Chris, who actually does the actual work on mine because Dominic opened up his own page, which is One of a Kind Sports.
Yep.
We have One of a Kind Sports, but he also, I think, has rvdtv.com. So I'm a little confused, but my show will air live, I think, on all three of them and on my Twitter. Yeah, so
awesome.
It's pretty cool to reach that many people.
And you're active on Instagram and what's the one that we just started doing, Joe? X now, right?
X. It's formerly known as Twitter. And
Twitter.
X. Yep.
Twitter.
Right.
Yeah, I guess you guys do it all.
Facebook, all of it. All of it is The Real RVD is my handle everywhere. I don't do TikTok, so don't look for me there.
I don't do TikTok either. Yeah.
That makes three of us.
Not into it.
I hear you. Hey, there's an audience for that though.
That's my imitation of a TikTok video that I follow.
There you go. Well, you'd have some success with that too, I'm sure. But yeah, it's not my thing either. So, all right, Rob. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I won't take up any more of your time, but it was a pleasure to talk with you, and I enjoyed talking and just hearing about your take on different things. Balance was something, a big takeaway for me.
Mental health. No, we loved
mental
it. Mental
health is huge. Yeah. And so many people are struggling with mental health. I think it's very admirable to come from somebody like you that, seeking help is important.
It's such a personal thing to go through that you feel all alone, and like when I was like at my rock bottom, which actually was WrestleMania in Dallas, 2016. I apologize to anybody that saw me there. I had a 13-hour blackout from drinking, and as I was finding out what happened little by little, some of the things that I did during that blackout, I was so ashamed. I had the worst spiritual hangover ever, as well as physical. But anyway, that's where for me, I hit rock bottom, and it's also where I met Katie Forbes, and she, escorted me into this whole new chapter of my life where when I rebuilt myself, I left a lot of stuff in the past. It was just like reprioritizing stuff that was always important to me before, like say my action figure collection, all my comic books. You know what? Do I really care? I don't think I'm going to bring that into my 40s, into my late 40s. I think I'm going to leave that behind. And getting out of the old life, meaning the evil ex, the divorce and everything was so crucial that I could have set the house on fire with everything I owned inside of it and moved on. And that would have been okay, because that's how it felt to go through such a major loss and then rebuild with what feels like scratch, even though it's not from zero at all, but it felt like that. And there was things, values, and there was principles, and there was hobbies, and there was physical things that I just left behind. It did not bring, and people sometimes don't understand, like, no, I just don't do that anymore. I'm not into that anymore. You know what, I left it behind. and people who have been through what I've been through, maybe they can relate to it. I don't know. But
you're very relatable, Rob. Oscar Fiorito always talks about people like you that talk about mental health and inspirational messages, and he says if you could just touch one person, just one person,
right. And I know that I do.
touch. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I'm great. And and that's true too. Like, that's so motivating for me to keep doing what I'm doing. People tell me, dude, one person, one comment that really stands out, that I read recently said, RVDology. No, he said, next to RVDology, he said wrestling is the second most important thing that I've done in my life. And that means a lot. I mean, I know that I've really helped this guy, and that's really what I wanted to get to when I was talking about it being personal. Is man, we all can be in that helpless feeling, and it's so important to get stronger, because it's not going to end. I mean, you got to learn to get your hands back up and to recover from what you're going through right now, so you can take the next blow. So when somebody focuses on one thing too much, and they're allowing themselves to stay depressed just because their girlfriend cheated on them and they broke up, it's like, bro, what about when your grandma passes and look at you now? You get up off the ground. You're better off without her, man. You don't realize that was a mismatch. And that's something too. I can look at my whole first marriage and I understand so clearly now what different people we were. We were amazingly different. Just like the therapist, the counselor once said, like, it's amazing you two lasted together this long. That's how I feel. Like, holy crap. Yeah. A lot of it is, though, because she wasn't really honest. She kind of fed what she thought I wanted to hear her say a lot, like my dreams were our dreams. There was a lot of that BS that made it last a lot longer than it should have. And, everyone, there's a bigger picture. And man, if you are so down like I was, your voice isn't even all together. My voice was so weak. This is what I want to say. Picking that phone up and asking for help was one of the hardest things I had to do. Oh, yeah. It was so hard because it was admitting I'm weak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I needed help. I was literally like, I can't kick out. And I'd pick the phone up and I'd hang it up. Next day, I'd pick it up, I'd hit one number, I'd hang up. That's how I did it. Finally, I talked to somebody and they were saying they couldn't fit me in. I was like, no, you can't do this to me. You have to fit me in. You don't understand what it took. So, people that are there themselves going through that, if it could be helpful for you to hear someone like me who's successful by my own standards, fulfilled by my own dreams, loving life, and hoping to inspire others, if it can help you to hear me say that I was there, that's not the whole story. That's only temporary. If it can help you to hear me say that I was there, I got out, you can get out too, then I'm glad to fucking humble myself live or on the air in front of thousands and thousands of your viewers, the millions of viewers that this.
This is great, Rob. Awesome stuff, man.
Thank you so much for
Don't be
sharing
afraid
that.
of meds. Don't be afraid of meds. I heard someone took Prozac and killed themselves too. But you know what? Some meds you can mix with alcohol. Some you can't. Some people are predispositioned towards all
Like,
kinds of crazy
yeah.
shit happening, such as dying from eating peanuts. They're not all you.
It's true.
You're the only you. You're one of a kind, just like me. And maybe if you're there, you should definitely consider everything as an option. Consider everything as an option. Weigh it all out. Rule it in, rule it out. But you have to put everything on the table for consideration. You can't just automatically say, fuck no, Nancy Reagan told me drugs are bad. Drugs are bad. Get your teeth worked on without drugs. Have a baby. Get your fucking get your heart transplant without taking any drugs. You'll impress me then. You know?
That's a very good point. Very good point. Well, you know what? You mentioned this. I'm gonna go one step further with you. CBD. You've been an advocate for the longest time. What brought you to that? I was going to let you go, but now you reeled me back in here.
Yeah.
So you know, I've been a cannabis advocate for a very long time. So, people know about me being in High Times magazine. I don't know if you know, but I actually debated our former drug czar Barry McCaffrey at one point on TV on Geraldo Rivera's show, and it's an area that I have an affinity for, that I've always been fascinated by. One of the things that fascinates me is that prohibition was created by lies, and they purposely misinformed and put out disinformation as a campaign to the public. And so I learned that is how our government actually really operates when it comes to UFOs, when it comes to anything that they want top secret. They purposely put out disinformation, and they hide certain top level secret stuff that they don't think we should be privy to. So that blew my mind. But I learned how helpful cannabis could be, how it has amazing medicinal benefits, and I learned that it was a Schedule I controlled substance since Richard Nixon said so in 1970. It never changed since 1970. It's listed as a non-medicinal.
Wow, I didn't know it was under that jurisdiction, Rob. This is good information.
Schedule I says absolutely zero medicinal value, the most dangerous
This
drug.
was during the Nixon administration. What year again?
1970. It was supposed to be temporary while they did the studies. He didn't like the results of the studies, so he just kept it in there. Kept it in the Schedule I, along with heroin and acid. Now, Schedule II,
bucket. That's I don't know if
you're gonna love
belongs in that bucket.
Joe, Schedule II means more medicinal value, better for you, better for society. Schedule II is where you find cocaine and meth.
Wow.
Okay, so I figured if people know that the government they're taking people's houses and locking people in jail for life using these rules that meth is safer for you than marijuana, I think if people knew the truth and looked at the Controlled Substance Act, I think there'd be some changes. And I also learned, even though they say it's non-medicinal, I learned that state by state, we were legalizing it for medicinal benefits. I learned that the federal government, the same government that scheduled it there and that enforces that, they have a patent and they actually have a medicinal form of marijuana. And they always have. It's called Marinol. It's a little pill, and they give it to cancer patients, AIDS patients, people that are wasting away to stimulate appetite, to aid in comfort, to help them sleep. They've always done that. So that's the hypocrisy. Also, the federal government grew marijuana and actually gave it to a limited number of patients. They still had like 6 alive a few years ago. I don't know if anyone's still alive or not. But so the same federal government growing marijuana because people are grandfathered into this time period where they did this. So they're still doing it, sending them their own marijuana rolled up in a coffee can. And these guys are advocates showing people, I get this from the federal government. the medicinal benefits have been great. My evil ex had cancer, and I was there as an advocate, talking to the people at the City of Hope about why do you not offer cannabis as a suggestion to all these suffering people. And they said, we're not allowed to mention it, but since you brought it up, yes, a lot of people do get benefits from marijuana. And I'm like, that's a ridiculous position to have, to let the people suffer, let them waste away. Because I was at a dietary meeting, and an old lady said, I can't eat. I'm nauseous, wasting away, makes me sick. I just can't keep it down. Any suggestions? And the lady that's getting paid there, it's her policy to not mention marijuana, knowing that it could help the people. So that's inhumane. She said, try and sprinkle some protein powder in your food, bullshit like that. And then once I said, what about marijuana? She said, a lot of people, it helps with nausea. It helps stimulate their appetite. It helps people put on weight. It helps them with the pain, helps them with overall comfortableness and sleeping. And anyway, I felt obligated just knowing that marijuana could help so many people, and that the government's lying to you, so that they can control and make more money, and so that pharmaceuticals can sell more, so that they can sell more products that are inferior, to hemp. And alcohol and tobacco can make more money. And I realize that's the way that our government really works. So CBD is basically everything that marijuana can do for you medicinally without getting high, because when you remove the THC, which by the way, this is something I always knew, but it's been illegal to study marijuana ever since Mayor LaGuardia in New York in the 40s, when they were doing the disinformation campaign. Harry Anslinger was the butthole head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. He had a hair up his ass, Harry Anslinger, about cannabis. And so he did the Reefer Madness movie campaign. Mayor LaGuardia said, if I'm going to prohibit this in New York City, let me do my own tests and find out, make sure that all this, because these are some crazy. Come on, Harry. Kids are fucking taking it at an alarming rate, and an increasing number of kids are getting, addicted and having to be hospitalized.
Fear-mongering, yeah. All
that shit. And so, okay, go ahead. Well, Mayor LaGuardia did his test. You can look it up. The LaGuardia Commission report. And you can see, I think it's 1943, I believe, that the results came out. And then LaGuardia says, whoa, this is harmless. Why am I going to spend money trying to prohibit this in my city? There's no proof that it's addictive. There's no proof that it's even dangerous. None of this. If anything, it seems like it'd be inhumane to prohibit this. So what Harry Anslinger did was he banned that report until recently from ever being seen, and he banned future testing on marijuana forever. We're just now overcoming that. We're just now, Institution of Medicine in Massachusetts has had a lawsuit since 1990 suing the government for prohibiting testing on it. Anyway, in the last few years, we've slowly been overcoming, even though it's still technically federally illegal. We've been able to look at the plant, and guess what? It doesn't just get you high. There's over 100 different cannabinoids or elements that are special to this plant, and they have a wide range of uses, practicalities that it could help our planet. One of my mentors was Jack Harrer. He's a big name in the industry, and he used to give away. He would sell it, but he was so passionate. I saw him give away many times this huge, thick book that he put out. The Emperor Wears No Clothes. It had all these facts about the over 5,000 different uses that we had for the most resourceful plant on the planet. Henry Ford made a car out of hemp that ran on hemp seed oil. but the government didn't want to go it that
Oh
way.
yeah, some of it is even stronger than some plastics. Yeah, no, I agree with you, Rob.
So with the CBD, that was my way. I opened up my own CBD company, and that was my way to get into selling more cannabinoids. And really, I don't have to profit from it. I just want to make it more accessible for the people that could benefit from it, whether it's from advocating or putting my face on it and literally putting it in the stores. That venture right now is at zero because my partners were unscrupulous. They were paying themselves and telling me the opposite. So I closed that down. People still ask me all the time, do you have any product in my state? I don't have any anywhere as far as cannabis goes right now.
Wow. That's what a crazy history of
Yeah.
trying to just close it down and keep it out of the
And
hands of the citizens,
and it's because pharmaceutical, it's because the elite rulers of our world, there's a very small group of elite families that really make the decisions. And the more I've learned about that, the more I realize we're so distant from it that our world as it appears to us isn't even real in the same way that theirs is to them. And it's the Rockefellers with the oil. They made, and pharmaceuticals are oil based as well. And it's Morgans, the bankers, but alcohol, tobacco, pharmaceuticals, textiles. People know about William Randolph Hearst, ran the newspaper businesses by chopping down forests full of trees, 20-year-old trees, when you could use hemp. And it has a 90-day cycle if you control it. Every 90 days, you can get a full-grown tree, and the fibers are actually superior in strength and in ways where it's safer to process than the environment than actual 20-year-old trees. So there were so many reasons that the world leaders did not want marijuana to be utilized.
Very educational. I'm so happy that you're speaking on this.
Yeah, over the decades, what they've done is got their grip further and further on cannabis, so that when it actually does flip, they're going to be in control of it. They're going to be the ones providing it to you.
Wow.
That's the way that it runs.
It's crazy when you look at the top companies in this country and even the whole world, how, like you said, there are so many. If you look at who owns all of them, there's a very limited number of people that are kind of pulling all the strings and running multiple companies. I mean, it's the corruption is insane, and nobody knows about it. It's
one of those things. It's like, I don't know, too big to fail, but also too big to even fathom the power. The power they have to pick the world leaders, to decide what we have and don't have in our lifetime for generations and generations.
And to, in this case, withhold information or to alter information.
Absolutely. They do it all the time.
It's crazy. It's eye-opening to even get just the slightest little glimpse into, what's going on.
It really is. It's fascinating.
Well, thank you, Rob. I really, the insight today was insane. It's funny, you prepare for interviews like this, and the opportunity to sit down with RVD, and just the insight that you shared. It's unimaginable. It's not where I thought things would go today, and I'm so grateful that that you touched on all this stuff. It's really impactful to a lot of people. You're doing a lot of good in the in the universe with this, and you're using your notoriety in such a positive and respectable way. So thank you for that.
Cool. Yeah, really appreciate that confirmation very much.
Very much.
Absolutely. I'm plugged in. I am plugged in to the universe. And that's something that I did when I rebuilt myself with my spiritual self forward. The agenda is always, I said that the agenda is always to be conscious of, to balance and raise my spiritual vibration. And that is confirmation that I'm on the right path. That's how you do it.
Absolutely. I
You know,
totally agree.
I know when I'm unplugged, I'm on the wrong path. My synchronicities aren't happening. My energy's low. I'm clumsy. I'm dropping shit. I'm frustrated. That's what it feels like to me. It's obvious. And I'm like, whoa, I gotta get my vibration back up. Gotta get plugged back into the universe, back on the path where I'm supposed to be.
Love it, Rob.
Reset.
Yeah, and it takes positivity. You can't think bad thoughts and feel good at the same time. So think good thoughts. You can't think good thoughts and feel bad at the same time. So at the exact same time while you're thinking good thoughts.
Very good. Very good point. Excellent advice.
Awesome, Rob.
Well, thank you so much, Rob. I really appreciate your time today.
Right on, guys. I enjoyed the talk.